Story 1. They ignore the fact that most of the process is incredibly boring. It often seems like the hackers are doing exciting work on the keyboard, but in reality, it is mostly standard scans, phone calls to try to get people to leak details or credentials, and dumpster diving. Story 2. A progress bar or visual representation of firewalls being breached usually shifts to red or shows a line opening like a door. Story 3. Naval Criminal Investigative Service, where two people were preventing a hack by typing together on the same keyboard. Story 4. No hacker, played by an actor, picks up a phone to use acting to get a password reset on someone else's account. Story 5. Mashing the keyboard and screen with green text while this music plays in the background. Story 6. I remember on Naval Criminal Investigative Service they once had two people furiously smashing the same keyboard to somehow hyperhack. I am not a computer expert, but I am pretty sure it does not work that way. Story 7. For best results, try it using a real keyboard, pressing buttons as quickly as possible. Story 8. Everything in Swordfish is completely accurate. All hacking involves 7 monitors, techno music, a sexual act, and Hugh Jackman cracking encryption in 60 seconds. Any film that does not follow this exact formula is clearly just Hollywood fantasy. Story 9. A series of random characters entered in a command line, followed by the terminal displaying a large green access granted window. Story 10. There is an old episode of Naval Criminal Investigative Service that shows two characters typing on the same keyboard in an attempt to stop a hacker. Story 11. Independence Day is the worst one I have seen. Oh look, the extraterrestrials are on our internet and use Macintosh operating system to run their ship. Yawa. Story 12. Computers are turned on and immediately ask for a password. After entering it correctly, you go straight to the important file or function you are looking for. It is like turning on a private computer. There is no Windows password but something else. If you type it correctly, a specific folder opens immediately. No one would set up a computer like that. Story 13. You can merge two disparate databases from two unrelated organizations without weeks of preparation, mapping, and a whole team of people. Hold on. I will cross-reference the Department of Motor Vehicles records with all of the hospital records from the night of January 16th to see if anyone with red hair was admitted. I'm in. It makes me want to kick the television screen. Story 14. Pretty much everything. The majority of hacking is social engineering. It is not about running code to crack the mainframe or whatever. It is more like, can I fool Mary in accounting into clicking this link on a deceptive email, or even, I am going to go to a bar where I know people from XYZ Corporation socialize and try to talk to people while they are drinking. Story 15. Almost everything in the movie Hackers. Reflections of colorful code on the screen reflected on their faces. I am in. Story 16. That zooming in on a blurry picture makes it clear. Cannot see that license plate from 5 miles away? Just zoom in on the photo. Now it is crystal clear. Usually with the boss telling the technician, enhance. Enhance again. Aha, we have got it. Story 17. Hacking the fire sprinklers at a high school. Why would the fire sprinklers be connected to the internet, especially in 1995? Hack the planet. Story 18. Screens display numerous windows of animations, line graphs, scrolling text, and bar graphs. When a window opens about a person, it expands into multiple windows showing a driver's license, birth certificate, map to the house, credit card statement, and family tree, including the classic television hacking scene. Story 19. Phishing is incredibly successful. Attackers copy company templates, and regular employees often give out information. Just like that, you're in. In one case at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, having one unsecured hardline was enough to access top-secret documents. Story 20. Hal. There is a new virus in the database. Margot. What is happening? Hal. It is replicating and using up memory. What should I do? The plague. Type cookie. You idiot. I will head them off at the pass. Story 21. Discovering passwords one character at a time. This is frustrating and unnecessary. Story 22. Pressing random keys on the keyboard for 3.2 seconds instantly grants access to a highly classified Central Intelligence Agency server containing all the government's most sensitive secrets. Story 23. It is mainly the human element that is exploited. Why learn how to program when someone can tell you how to log on like a normal user? Story 24. I used to watch Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and before they would even finish their sentence about what they wanted to do, McGee would announce, "I'm in." As a systems administrator for an enterprise company, I always said that you cannot even get a login prompt to begin entering your username and password that fast. A few seconds later, he had downloaded their entire database onto a USB thumb drive, and my head would explode. Story 25. Not specific to hacking but specific to Hollywood. I am accessing the closed-circuit television. No, you are not. Story 26. The portrayal of hackers as highly intelligent is misleading. A hacker only needs to find one flaw, which is much easier than creating a system with no flaws. Story 27. Hackers never use a mouse. I understand that we all like keyboard shortcuts and try to avoid using the mouse whenever possible, but not to that extent. Story 28. Any user interface or visualization other than a terminal command line. This is why I loved Mr. Robot so much. They made hacking feel intense even though they just showed typing commands into a terminal. Story 29. They just stole that person's phone. Get me the audio. 2 seconds later, the call is playing over the speaker. Story 30. If you are wearing a hoodie with the hood up and you are on a computer in a cafe, you are considered a hacker. At least that is what our security training at work teaches us. Story 31. Letters projected onto your face. Yes, a text console is a powerful tool, but projecting it onto your face allows you to read nothing. Story 32. 2 pixels in an image can be enhanced into a 100-megapixel image that can be turned into a 3-dimensional model accurate enough to measure height and weight. Story 33. In reality, hacking is more like spam call phishing schemes. It is about finding a vulnerability rather than brute forcing an unbreakable mainframe. Story 34. I have been rewatching Smallville, and the hacking scenes always make me laugh. They remind me of the movie Hackers every time. Story 35. Writing elaborate scripts in real time is part of hacking a system, especially when they are competing against some information technology person on the other end who spots them on the system and starts writing their own scripts. To be fair, a scene where a hacker sends a phishing email and just waits for someone to give up their password would be less exciting. Story 36. Contrary to other commenters, I would say that exploiting vulnerabilities in different sites or applications is not as difficult as it is often portrayed. Depending on what you are doing, much of the hacking involves inserting simple code snippets into entry points that are not properly secured, such as poorly designed payment gateways and login screens, which anyone can do with minimal training. Story 37. Lack of redundancy. The plot of many movies seems to be, if we can blow up all their computers or hack into their database, we can destroy everything. Now, do you know how many redundant copies every company has of their data these days? If you use cloud services, each server has a minimum of 3 copies of everything, and usually there are redundant servers, each with their own copies of everything, hosted in different countries around the world. If you develop locally, there are also backups on a server at your company's information technology headquarters, which is often located far from the business headquarters. Some places even make hard disks and ship them to a warehouse just in case. Story 38. War of the Worlds on Prime is probably the most ridiculous example of hacking in Hollywood I have ever seen. I was crying with laughter toward the end. It is a horrible movie, but the seriousness was very funny. Story 39. How long it takes. Operations by groups like Salt Typhoon are engineered over years. They not only steal data but also insert other backdoors. No one accomplishes anything substantial in a single session. Story 40. The little high-pitched noises when some text gets displayed on screen. Seriously, how annoying would that be in real life? Story 41. This is a billion-bit encryption. It is impossible to hack. Let me try. I am in. Story 42. You do not just hack someone in a few seconds, and it does not matter if you are connected in 5 seconds or 2 hours. Generally, it is about exploiting unknown vulnerabilities, sometimes called zero-day vulnerabilities. These are flaws in software that have been found by malicious people who are selling them to the highest bidders. These bugs, for example in Microsoft software, have not been found or fixed yet, and the company is unaware that an exploit exists. Story 43. It used to be 90% social engineering. Technical skills were barely required. It might still be that much. Story 44. Gaining control of security systems and cameras is challenging. Most security systems operate on isolated networks, making access difficult. Additionally, there is no standard method for obtaining video streams. You need to know the encoding formats before connecting to the camera. Otherwise, you will only see a black screen. Story 45. Just in general, the speed at which it happens. You can roll up in the middle of a firefight and type some commands to gain access. Consider the 44 hours of fuzz testing it took to discover that the door lock software crashed with certain inputs, followed by a week and a half of experimentation and development to determine that you could embed an executable payload in that input and execute it. Story 46. They show a generic screen where things are happening and matrix text. Most hacking is not like that. It would be really boring if they showed actual hacking. Story 47. Pretty much everything. The most accurate show about hacking was Mr. Robot. The other shows depict someone clicking on a keyboard and gaining access in seconds, which is completely unrealistic. Story 48. You can't just open a.exe file on Linux by double-clicking it. Executable files in Windows use the portable executable format and require the Windows operating system to run. Linux uses different executable formats like ELF. To run a Windows executable on Linux, you need compatibility layers like Wine or virtualization software. Alternatively, you can find a Linux version of the application or use containerization tools. Story 49. The fact that they cannot pull a plug out of a wall socket, but they can make a progress bar to show their boss exactly to the nanosecond when the hackers will have broken through the firewalls. Story 50. Not particularly the hackers themselves, but the portrayal of these cybersecurity offices makes me laugh out loud. Clinically clean, state-of-the-art decor, physically fit cyber intelligence agents. No pizza boxes, weeks-old used coffee cups, overweight sweaty sun-deprived people, or keyboards with bits of food on them. That is the reality. Story 51. The most accurate movie was War Games, aside from the sentient computer concept. The most accurate TV series was Mr. Robot. Everything else is just varying degrees of horribly inaccurate. Though hackers and swordfish have a special place in hacker lore as so bad that they are good. Story 52. Hackers can look like Root from Person of Interest. Well, they can. It is just very unlikely, and all major exposed hackers have been young men. Story 53. Anytime a hacker is able to simply access any access point and gain entry, a hacker is nothing without their tools. Story 54. Hacking is a lot like robbing a bank. The first part, getting the money, the database, or credentials, is easy. The hard part is getting away with it. I have seen very few Hollywood depictions that address the getting away with it part. Another point is that 90% of hacking is social engineering. The person who optimized his fake betting site to the top of search engine results on the day of the big Manny Pacquiao fight was unethical. He compromised a dozen computers under my responsibility with the payload that site delivered. However, respect is due. That is indeed how you do it. Story 55. Two people typing on one keyboard doubles the efficiency, and unplugging a computer solves everything. Story 56. Working on a printed circuit board with 0402 surface mount device parts and quad-flat no-lead packages using a soldering iron that was last used to burn freehand drawings of unicorns on oak planks by the property master's child. Story 57. A hacker can sit at any computer anywhere and immediately have everything needed to carry out hacking. Story 58. The keyboard produces beep sounds, and the text and images displayed on the screen have sound effects. Story 59. The most accurate thing I have ever seen was Trinity hacking the power station in the Matrix, legitimately accessing the system. Story 60. Memory might be failing me here, But is there not a scene in Resident Evil where Mila Jovovich is trying to hack into something and we get a view of her laptop screen? Password. Access denied. Tap 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 tap. Password / hack asterisk 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 asterisk. Access granted. Story 61. 1. The number of person hours involved. In reality, it involves gathering information for days, weeks, or months to gain access. Alternatively, it may be a state-sponsored hacking team of dozens of people with a large budget. 2. Sometimes hacking is a highly sophisticated exploit requiring deep knowledge of software, hardware, and internet theory. However, most of the time it involves tricking the weakest link, an employee, into revealing their password, or finding a machine or application that was not patched and has been running a well-known exploit for years. Story 62. How long it takes. But a movie would be very boring if it was someone spending hours on a computer trying to find a vulnerability to gain access to a system. Story 63. For the opposite of all this, check out the movie Black Hat. I am not saying it is the most realistic hacking movie ever made, but it is close enough. Story 64. Movie Swordfish. John Travolta threatened the life of Hugh Jackman's daughter if he could not hack a password in 30 seconds. Story 65. Tracing a call with lines moving slowly across a world map on a monitor has to be impressive. Now they are calling from Karachi. No, wait, they are in Honolulu. Story 66. Every step of the hacking process in the user interface shown on screen produces an electronic sound. Story 67. The idea that the host has built a graphical user interface to show how close the hackers are to gaining access. Especially one that looks remarkably like sperm swimming towards an egg. Story 68. In movies, they are always rushing, as if the person who types the fastest wins. Even if it really worked that way, which it does not, the most prepared person would win instead of the fastest typer because computers can run a script faster than anyone can type. Story 69. As someone in the cybersecurity industry, most people who are hackers are usually men and a bit unusual, not someone attractive brunette in a leather jacket, which makes up 90% of Hollywood hackers. Story 70. Criminal Minds, where Penelope and her boyfriend happen to be sitting down and hacking each other at the same time because the Federal Bureau of Investigation has no firewalls or other security measures in place other than the two of them. Story 71. It is usually easier to use social engineering to gain access to sensitive data than to rely on skills that involve typing at a computer for long periods of time. Story 72. Uploading a computer virus to disable an extraterrestrial mothership, thereby disabling their defenses and saving the world. Story 73. It takes diligence to break into a secure system. It is not a case of typing a few things like guessing the password is password, and you are in. Story 74. I have always loved Independence Day. It is a good laugh of a film, but it was flawed. The best part, setting aside compatibility issues, was when they put a virus on a memory stick and then flew up to the mothership to use it. They knew it would be a time-critical mission, a one-in-a-million shot requiring exact timing and the smallest amount of time to succeed. From the transfer speed shown for suspense, it is extremely slow. Yet they decide the best bet is to also embed an animated, likely sound-enabled laughing skull. The skull animation is probably 1,000 times larger than the virus. It was quite a risk just to insult aliens for 5 seconds who probably did not know what it was. Story 75. Anyone smart enough can hack into any device and bypass any firewall with a few clicks. This is basically all that they demonstrate. Story 76. Passwords being cracked one character at a time, with that character showing up in plain text while some process scans each of the other characters in a rolling process. That is not accurate. Story 77. The fast typing on random windows popping up on some computers they just started using is likely because they have to create a program first, then find a way to install the program on someone else's computer. Story 78. Just sitting down in front of any computer and knowing how to bypass, access, and navigate its system within seconds. Story 79. Pretty much all of it. I think the only time I have seen somewhat realistic hacking in a movie was in Hackers 2 Operation Takedown, the Kevin Mitnick story. Story 80. I wish someone would actually make a transmission control protocol / internet protocol diagnostic and troubleshooting utility that looks like a high-quality 3D game from the 1990s. That would make my job much cooler. Story 81. In one of the Transformers movies, to counter the big superbug, a hacker is frantically typing. He calls over the boss, and the boss puts their fingers on the same keyboard so they can enter code twice as fast through teamwork. When that fails, they call for a third person to assist on the same keyboard, but she instead unplugs the supercomputer. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.